Hello there everybody, your favourite Adam's favourite Adam from WhatCulture here, and we are back yet again for another instalment of the show where I take the arrows and I talk about the show with the big X in it. But just before we get started, I need to show you something really quickly because it's really quite important to me. So, you know how I do the show about NXT, how I'm like the NXT guy? Well, we did a quiz on AEW and this happened.
Or 9.
WhatCulture Clery.
Was it 8?
WhatCulture Clery.
Breadsticks.
Tees.
WhatCulture Clery.
Santana and Ortiz.
His 8
WhatCulture Clery.
Eaten in a steakhouse.
spine
WhatCulture Clery.
The first one.
wrestler.
WhatCulture Clery.
Penta.
Penta El Zero is correct. And the winner of the hardest AEW quiz ever.
Little bit of an upset, you might say. Yes, there you go. Proof once and for all that I am indeed the best at that and probably everything. But I'll tell you what else is the best, NXT. And as we tend to do this time of the week, there was another episode of it airing on the USA Network. And as we tend to do the day after, we are going to go through all the good bits and all of the bad bits. If you are new here, that is the entire gimmick. And I've said this a couple of times, but NXT has like a bit of a weird up and down trajectory, doesn't it? When it builds up a really highly anticipated episode, it tends to underdeliver, and when it just quietly leads into something you're not expecting, it's usually really good. So, with 2 huge cage matches on the card tonight, expectation was high, and so were my worry levels. But I've already used up way too much of this intro gloating about that quiz win, so let's get up to our nuts in it. My name is Adam Clery, hashtag on Thursdays. We wear yellow, and these are all the ups and downs for this week's episode of NXT. Right, straight in, no messing. Dakota Kai versus Tegan Knox, the first steel cage match of the night, a continuation of their feud from TakeOver Portland. She had locked out Raquel Gonzalez, hadn't she? Tegan Knox, she was going to get her hands on her former best friend and nobody was going to interfere. Well, obviously someone interfered. Just before we get started, I really like when Tegan Knox comes out first and Dakota Kai comes out second, because it's just like a big audio metaphor for how my music tastes personally changed in my late teens. It was like, it's a pop punk banger. It's like, oh yeah, and then there's just a cut and it's like, and that was me at around 19. Now, whether this is a simple production choice or the fact there is something else on another channel which wrestling fans might want to watch, NXT absolutely loves a searing hot start. It's hard on for intense opening matches can be seen from space, and even with the bar set as high as it is, I still think this is probably one of the best opening matches they have ever done. And this is the thing, I was worried about this feud initially. I didn't know if either woman had enough experience on NXT to really carry it off, and then I was really worried about them doing a street fight because neither of them had done a proper takeover match before, and then I was really worried about them having to continue that all with a cage match on television, and every single time I look like an idiot because these two never miss up. Like, this is a big continuation of the takeover match without ever quite exceeding it. I think it's got some brutal looking high spots. Knox flies off the top of the cage for a crossbody, which, given she's only landing on Dakota Kai, who is not a sizable human being, looked a lot scarier on the replays. And as well, the finish, quite original for a steel cage match. I thought, like, Knox is coming down the side and Gonzalez is trying to pull Kai out of the thing, but she realizes she can't do it because Knox kicks the door, so she just traps Knox in the door and lets Kai fall out of her own accord. And the only time I can think I've ever seen that before is in Jurassic Park 3. Couple of small points on this. First of all, the referee getting trapped against the door was one of the funniest things I have ever seen. Secondly, Dakota Kai, if you're ever in Newcastle, please me up. And third, and most importantly, I got really annoyed at the start of this match because it was a really explosive opening, and then they just cut to the adverts again. I was like, oh god, I keep forgetting every week that they do this, and I got so angry. I got so angry until another advert for that BFC Angus thick burger. What, that? A burger with a wheel of crispy cheese on the top? It's been 3 weeks now. I need to eat this thing. I need to know how bad that is in both my mouth and my stomach and my heart and my veins. I just need to know. So if you're in America and you're anywhere near wherever it is sells that, can you please send me a picture of it? I need to know Anyway, yes, so Dakota Kai falls out the cage. Gonzalez yet again stops Knox from beating it, and we know they are going to meet again, and it will probably be in this women's tournament that's on the cards at the minute. Knox is still hugely over despite 2 big defeats, and Kai is emerging as one of the most vicious heels in the company. She's gonna have a big year, in my opinion. They probably both are, in all honesty. I really like this match. Am I gonna give it there? Yeah, it gets the yellow jacket. So there you go, a great opening match between 2 women having their own feud away from the title picture. But if that wasn't enough for you, we then had Rhea Ripley hyping up her WrestleMania match against Charlotte in a really compelling promo package. And if that still wasn't enough for you, the second match of the night was a wrestling match between Shotzi Blackheart and Chelsea Green as one of the first matches in this qualifier for the ladder match for the #1 contendership thing at Portland, etc., whatever the hell that is. The entire opening 3 segments of the show were all from the women's division and all completely separate. 3 things that all exist completely separately of each other and are all really interesting. We can't wait for that Charlotte Ripley match at WrestleMania. That's going to be huge. We're dying to see who gets into this ladder match for TakeOver the night before, and Knox and Kai is a really good self-contained feud. That's probably the strongest division in the entire show. Like, they can't do this, obviously, but if WWE ever wanted to just bin off this project and basically do their own version of Stardom, just 2 hours of the NXT women's division every single week, they could. I mean, look who wasn't on this show. There was no Belair, there was no Candice, there was no Io, there was like all these other huge stars who didn't even get a look in, and we still had all this great stuff. I can't say enough good things about it. Now, yes, okay, the Shotzi Blackheart Chelsea Green match wasn't anything to write home about. It was a little sloppy in places. It felt a bit rushed. It could have done with a couple of more minutes, but here's the thing. These are 2 women with momentum. They've both had reasonable wins over the last couple of weeks. They've both been put together in this tournament. Only one can advance, and you're sitting there going, don't actually know who that's going to be. I can see reasons for both of them winning it, so giving Chelsea Green the win in the end continues her momentum, and now Shotzi has to take a step back. But the crucial thing is, she's not really hurt by this defeat. You can see the path that still lies out for her if she wants to get anywhere near the title picture. She'll have to go back to the women underneath that level, the Caden Carters of the world, the Aaliyahs of the world, before she gets back in the picture. And it's so simple, but it's how you lay out a wrestling division. It's brilliant. It's an up. Also, just gonna give another up to Shotzi Blackheart's tank. Like, didn't do anything this week. It was just on television, but it's one of my favourite things in wrestling. And what am I doing with my career if I can't award metaphysical plus points to little miniature tanks that wrestlers ride to the ring? I loved it. It gets a point. Deal with it. Now, I owe all of you an apology because this next problem feels partially like it's my fault. Many times I've stood before you and gone, do you know what it is? NXT's brilliant, blah, 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 blah. It's the best way you can spend 2 hours watching wrestling on a Wednesday, blah, 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 blah. But the one thing with it, the one problem I have, is that everything is so one note. Every week the show starts with this banger from Slipknot, which has all the action and the exciting bits from last week, and then we get in the ring and it's just 2 hours of 100-mile-per-hour smash mouth, don't breathe, don't blink, just hit each other in the mouth, pro wrestling. And I'm always like, you just need another way to advance these stories without like a big backstage brawl or like a pull-apart fight or a 4-star plus intense wrestling match. It's exhausting to watch. It's brilliant, but it's exhausting, and I think the lack of variety hurts it. So obviously when Keith Lee came out and Cameron Grimes and they were going to have a little sparring match on the mic, I was like, oh good, hooray, like something that's not going to be a fist fight that's going to help move us towards a really good match. And I sat there and just went, oh, this is awful. And it really was absolutely all over the place, this promo. It felt so much like they both knew what they were going to say, but had no idea what the other person was going to say. So they kept like weirdly disrupting each other's flow or cutting each other off, or even worse, setting the other person up for something they just weren't going to say. Like Keith Lee started by giving it the whole, oh, you made a huge mistake, blah, 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 and then it just didn't work. So we had to change tack and be like, all right, what is it you actually wanted to say? And nobody got anywhere with this until Keith Lee just shoved him out the ring, and that was the best thing about that promo by a mile. I was like, yeah, hit him! Basically making a massive hypocrite out of myself over the last 6 months of my... It's a terrible promo. It's just a terrible, terrible in-ring segment, and it gets it down, and I feel sad. I think we're getting a North American Championship match out of this next week, but it was just so messy, I could be wrong. And speaking of divisions, which is a far better segue in the article version of this because I do the ups and the downs like next to each other, so I've just finished talking about the women's thing I really should have changed that before I came in. Anyway, speaking of divisions, because I said the women's division was good, does it actually feel to anybody else right now like we have a tag team division? Finally. Another problem NXT's had in the however long it's been on the USA Network is that there's just not really enough room on the show for a really well fleshed out men's title picture and a really well fleshed out North American title picture and a women's title picture, and then they folded the cruiserweights in as well, and something was always gonna have to take a backseat to it. And for the entire duration of the show, right up until the Dusty Classic, it was the tag team division. There was no real established tag teams, and even the tag team champions were part of a bigger story in a stable. You just didn't get a lot of matches. And genuinely, the Dusty Classic only finished at the end of January, and in a short 5 weeks since then, all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, there's loads of teams I care about who are really good and should be in the title picture, and there's even a couple underneath them to kind of pad things out and keep things moving on. Like Undisputed Era versus Lorcan and Birch this week was a classic example of that, because yes, Undisputed Era, you need to build them, but Lorcan and Birch looked really good even though they got beat, like you would in a division. UE picked up the win with their big swoosh move out of absolutely nowhere, but Lorcan and Birch looked really good in the match, so everybody kind of benefits from that. At the end, they were like, this is just not right, this is just really bad, I just miss being tag team champions. Do you miss being tag team? I miss being tag team champions. Well, I miss it too, so where are those loser weights? We want to talk to them, and you know what it is, Bobby Fish? A star for effort on loser weights, but also D for how good it actually is. Riddle and Dunn come out and accept their challenge for a rematch for the tag team champions, and it's just, oh look, a good match and a division that goes with it. It's not that hard to do, even if you've only got a limited number of tag teams. This whole thing is another up. But they can barely get a word out before the grizzled young veterans attack them on the ramp and then engage in a bit of sparring themselves. And you know what that means, everybody? That means Zach Gibson got a microphone this week, which is, of course, like Shotzi Blackheart's tank, another up. It's getting to the stage now, isn't it, where you could have the worst ever episode of NXT, which has no good in it whatsoever, but if you just put Zach Gibson on Shotzi Blackheart's tank and he has a microphone and all he says is, there is Eric Bugenhagen, it would get 3 ups from me. Oh well. Right, moving on from there, we had another television match, Austin Theory versus Isaiah Swerve Scott, and this was just a television match. Back in the day, this is all NXT used to be. 2 up-and-comers who've been on the brand for a while but don't really feature that often, them getting a bit of TV time, a little bit of a showcase in which we might be entertained, somebody might be elevated, who knows. They're kind of few and far between these days because such is the clamour to have this really intense smash-mouth pro wrestling that's going to stop anybody from picking up the remote control and changing the channel. We've got all these takeover standard blow-off matches, we've got all these title pictures, we've got all these vicious feuds. We hardly ever just get, here are 2 people wrestling because they're wrestlers and we just need the wrestlers to wrestle. It was a rare treat, but I really liked this. Like, sometime after WrestleMania, there's going to be a big shake-up of NXT and the title picture's going to get shuftied around and the North American title picture's going to get shuftied around, and a few people who've not really had a spotlight up until now are going to be lifted up slightly and need to start delivering. And I tell you what, Cameron Grimes, for all I have been a naysayer on him, he has delivered in the ring. Kushida is surely got to be in that equation. And in these two, they have yet more talent just dying to break out. Match itself was really good as well. Like, it was hard-hitting in parts, inventive in others, slick, creative. It was everything you kind of want from an NXT match. Scott targeted the arm, which Theory sold really well. He even hit his finisher on him without using his arm because he was still selling it, but he picked up the win and he moves on. Now, you cast your mind back to me the other week being like, ooh, don't really know why they're having Tommaso Ciampa beat up Austin Theory. If they're just going to bury him in his own match with it, then it's kind of not a good idea, but I was going to reserve judgment until we saw where it went. Well, this is me reserving judgment. He has been massively elevated from that Tommaso Ciampa feud, as brief as it was, and now everybody he works with feels like more of a bigger deal. Bigger of a more deal. Whatever the correct English for that, that's how it feels. Up. Okay, right, I've never done this before, but I am going to hold my hands up here because I am not too proud to admit that I don't know if this Johnny Gargano, Mauro Ranallo segment was any good whatsoever. So, like, the first time I watched it, I was like, oh god, this is bad. Like, Gargano was just, he's not really believable to me as a heel, but then I watched it back and I was like, do you know what it is? I'm very critical of when he does this stuff on the mic, and this is way better than he is in the past. So in the here and now, that's like a down, but in the grander scheme of things, in the context of his whole heel run, it's an improvement. So it's an up, and it was something different. It was in the Performance Center, and it kind of does work to further this idea that they're going back there, and it made Morrow like a sympathetic figure in all of this, and it was quite tense, but at the same time, it was really, really lame. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do about this, in all honesty. It's my job to give out these little arrows, and if I don't give out the little arrows, what is the point in me? What can I do? Stay there. Go.
Cringe.
Lame.
Cringe.
And it's a down. All right, so your main event of the evening, our second cage match of this week's episode of NXT. Roderick Strong finally gets his hands on Velveteen Dream. It's been bubbling over. He's been wearing those trunks with his wife and his kid on them, and he was going to punch him in the face, and had that match last week, which was bordering on a goddamn shoot fight. This was the payoff match to it all, probably. Now, there are two things we need to talk about here, and I will talk about them separately. First of all, the match. These two men are really good together. They have had incredible chemistry ever since they first started contesting the NXT North American Championship, and this was, again, kind of like Kai and Knox. It wasn't quite an elevation of the stuff before, but it was certainly a good, worthy continuation of it. It was brutal in all the way cage matches needed to be, and it was technical in all the way these two needed to be. It had the right balance. Now, they went back and forward, and as I've said before, I really like the shades of grey in this story. I like that, Strong is the heel, but he's sympathetic in what's happening to him, and Dream is the face, and while you're enjoying what he's doing, it is kind of a bit of a weird way to go about it. And I really liked, for the first time, they actually had Marina Shafir in this to give us some agency in her own story. She comes down the ring, she starts sliding strong weapons, and then she gets out of there. No chance of a weird, she's gonna smooch his opponent kind of weird double turn thing. She was just like, that's my face on your trunks, mate, so I'm gonna get involved a bit. And then, much like the match they had last week, Undisputed Era, they came down to interfere to try and cost Dream. But unlike last week, Dream has everything under control. He can probably win the match even with the interference, and he just shoves Roderick Strong out the door, costing himself the victory. Now, the match is an up. But here's the thing. I have absolutely no idea what this story is supposed to be now. Not like last week, where I was like, it's shades of grey. I'm not sure who I should support and who I should be booing. I'm like, now I have no idea who's doing what or why they're doing it. Commentary tried to play this off as a masterstroke on Dream's part. He had lured the Undisputed Era into a cage so he could get his hands on Adam Cole and Adam Cole's North American Championship. This was some cerebral thinking on the part of Dream. He had gone after Roderick Strong and Roderick Strong's family so he could have a title shot on someone else's belt. No. Now, don't get me wrong, if that's how you want to spin it, that's how you want to spin it. But Kushida got a match against Adam Cole for no other reason than he ended up in a bin. I cannot, in my head, piece together how it's at all logical for Velveteen Dream to go after Roddy Strong and have matches with Roddy Strong and wear Roddy Strong's wife and child on his crotch to get to Adam Cole. It doesn't work at all. That is like, he's lured them into this cage. It was his plan all along. It was Roderick Strong's idea, the steel cage. He just said last week, if you're going to have a steel cage, leave it up because I want to beat up Velveteen Dream. So, no. And even if that's somehow me being dense, even if there was loads of clues there for Velveteen Dream secretly just wanting to get Adam Cole in a cage at the end of all of this, why does he spend loads of time, 10 minutes prior to all of this, repeatedly trying to escape that cage? If I've made a trap for somebody and I am literally the bait, I can't leave the trap, because then it's not a trap, it's just an empty, it makes no sense. Now, here's the thing, I enjoyed the hell out of that match, almost to the point where I didn't even care what a convoluted mess of narratives and motivations it ended up being. The match can have its up, it's safe, it gets to take that home, but this whole story and the way they've moved this from interesting shades of grey rivalry to just a complete, Lost Season 6 levels of nonsensical, the way they've done that in the space of 5 minutes, is a down. And here's the thing, I know what the destination is with all of this. I know it's eventually got to be Roderick Strong versus Adam Cole for some Undisputed Era breakup, morally and philosophically opposed rivalry that's been bubbling under the surface for years. I know that's where we're going. I just now no longer see how that has to go through a big station marked Velveteen Dream puts Marina Shafir's face on his cock. Now, yeah, alright, you might be sitting there thinking, hang on, is he actually complaining about something being a surprise when he always complains when things aren't a surprise? And kind of, like, in a way I am doing that, but just, imagine if one episode of NXT Ups and Downs I went, aha, by the way, I have worms for fingers. You would be like, no you don't. I've watched this before, you don't have worms for fingers. But imagine if I'd worn a glove in every single episode and went, haha, it was actually worms for fingers under here all along. You'd be like, I am shocked, but also it makes sense. So yes, there you go. That is another episode of NXT in which some things were good and some things were bad. And I stood here and told you which ones were good and which ones were bad for free, because that is our business model. Let us know what you made of it all in the comments below. Of course, but oh my God, I am forgetting. Before we go, there is still time for the most important feature on this week's episode of NXT Ups and Downs. It is, of course, Bug Watch. Yeah, there we go. The one jazzy, groovy up that is automatically assigned to an episode of NXT when we get sight or sound of Rick Bugs a la Eric Bugenhagen. And did he feature in any way, shape or form on this week's episode after sort of doing it last week? Getting real tired of this, NXT. Getting real tired. So there you go, that's actually the end now. Let us know what you made of it all in the comments below. Of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I have, of course, been Adam Clery. Follow me on Twitter, you cowards. # on Thursdays, we wear yellow. And I will see you soon.